Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many viewers here today. Good evening to each one of you. Today is an exciting day for all of us. Needless to say, I'm sure that all of us are thrilled to be part of today's live episode of Sapna Rise. Just a quick introduction. My name is Nijesh and I'm the director at Sapna Book House, and I am superlatively happy to be here amongst one of the greatest novelists of our time, Sir Jeffrey Archer. Thank you, sir, for joining in today. Before we get to the actual session, a quick rundown on Sapna Rise and RMZ and Radio 1. Sapna Rise, an initiative launched by India's largest book mall, Sapna Book House, is a digital platform aimed at connecting authors with readers and vice versa. In its first episode, started a month ago, Sapna Rise hosted some prime authors like Amish, Dr. Radhakrishna Pillai, Rupa Pai, and lot. And now in the sixth episode of season 1, we are presenting the master storyteller of today's time, Lord Jeffrey Archer himself. This episode is in partnership with RMZ Galleria Mall, located in North Bengaluru, and Radio 1 94.3. Sapna has been a proud partner with RMZ Mall since its inception and has been an active participant in various customer-led engagement activities. And we'll also like to congratulate RMZ for taking the lead in bringing Sir Jeffrey Archer amongst all of us here today. Moderating the event, we'll have two personalities. One, Miss Jane, RJ Jane from Radio 1 94.3. And we also have a known author amongst us, Miss Jailam Biswas Bose. RJ Jain, who's a lifestyle blogger, radio jockey, and MC, will be interacting with Sir Jeffrey Archer. And Jailam Biswas Bose, who is a top-selling author of the book Foolproof, will be taking in 10 to 15 top questions from all our viewers. With this, without much ado, I would like RJ Jain to take forward the proceedings. And once again, Sapna Book House, Sapna Rise, RMZ Galleria, and Radio 1 is extremely grateful to Sir Jeffrey Archer, who has come here amidst this tough pandemic situation going on, and he's ready to speak to each one of us. So welcome, Sir Jeffrey Archer. Thank you for coming. Jane, over to you.
Thank you.
Lord Jeffrey Archer. Well, the first time that I actually got to see him was at the Landmark bookstore in Chennai. Today, we have come in to Sapna Book House and we are doing a fantastic series. Lord Jeffrey Archer, thank you so much for joining us. First off, before we go into the questions, how is lockdown in London, Lord Jeffrey Archer, right now?
I'm in Cambridge. My wife and I are in Cambridge. And it's such a pleasant place to live. And because I'm able to write, I've already done 4 hours today. Because I'm able to write, life goes on. So I've written during lockdown, and I've been here for 141 days. During lockdown, I've written another book. So I've taken advantage of the terrible situation we are in and just got on with my work. So in a way, I'm in a very privileged and lucky position compared to other people.
275 million copies or so, and you've been published in more than 33 languages across 97 countries. I think anybody who has begun reading at whatever age across generations has always picked a Jeffrey Archer novel up, and that makes me happy. I'm actually going to go across to author Jailam Biswas Bose, who joins us from Delhi, Lord Jeffrey Archer in Cambridge. Some of you are watching this on Facebook. Please leave your questions on the side. But thank you once again, Lord Jeffrey Archer, for joining us. Jailam, over to you in Delhi. You can go ahead with kickstarting this interview. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, sir. It's a morning for you, and it's a great
afternoon here.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So, it's an honor to be speaking with you, and I guess it's every author's dream that comes true to talk to you and know more about what's coming next. So after your popular series Clifton Chronicles, there was Nothing Ventured, which is going to be another series of featuring the detective William Warwick. So what is the next venture of Nothing Ventured, and what is hidden in our plain sight? Would you like to share something?
I'm going to write a series with William Warwick, going from in his life in the Metropolitan Police Force. So he'll start as a young constable, where he's working in the art squad, chasing a Rembrandt that has been stolen. Of course, that's Nothing Ventured. But you will watch him during his life progress from being a constable on the beat to a detective. And then he'll become, in the second book, Hidden in Plain Sight, which comes out at the end of October. You'll have that at the end of October. He will become a detective sergeant, and he will be transferred to the drug squad. And he'll be chasing Mr. Big and trying to catch him as a young detective sergeant. It was thrilling to write because I'm very, very lucky to have two very distinguished police officers, a chief superintendent, and a detective sergeant, Michelle Roycroft, and the detective superintendent, John Sutherland, to advise me on any mistakes I might make, which adds to the authenticity of a book. So the story is always mine, the words are always mine, but a lot of people have been writing in saying it has a real authentic feel. And that's because I'm very well advised by two outstanding former policemen.
Thank you so much. That's something that we are also looking forward to your next book. And October, as you said, is when it is expected to release. So we'll go back to one of your earliest books, and I think one of the most popular books that people pick up from your series, Cain and Abel. And it's been more than 40 years from its release. It still continues to be a bestseller. What was your expectation from the book when it actually released? Did you foresee that it would be something like this?
It's a very good question. And the truth is that I didn't have a clue. And when it sold 1 million copies in the first week, I think I was as shocked as everybody else. It's now, of course, sold 37 million copies and been read by 100 million people. Heaven knows how many of them are in India, because they're great devotees of Cain and Abel, for which I'm immensely grateful. But no, the answer to your question is I had no expectations. People were kindly saying to me, this is going to be sensational all around the world. But I had no proof or no idea what that meant. And the shock came when it just sold so well immediately.
So as we saw in Cain and Abel and later in many of your books, there are multiple referencing to the Bible, to Shakespeare, to real life people. We would like to know a little bit about from what material do you draw inspirations and what inspires you to take ahead or take it as symbolical journey. How do you, what inspires you? That's what we would like to know.
Do you know, I get that question, and it's very, very difficult to answer because I don't know. I think I'm very lucky. Some people, you know, can sit down at a piano and they automatically are able to play a tune. Some people can sing. They can stand up on a stage and give you an opera. I tell a story. I think it's a God-given gift, and I'm very, very fortunate because I certainly can't sing and I certainly can't play the piano. So when I get that question, I have to say I've been lucky. Now, I do work very hard. Every book takes around 1,000 hours. I work from 6 to 8 in the morning, 10 till 12, 2 until 4, and 6 until 8 except I've stopped doing the last one during the lockdown. I've just done the 3 because I've been stuck in Cambridge for 135 days, and I'm not complaining because it means I've been able to concentrate even more on the upcoming book. And in that way, I've been very lucky. But the answer to your question is it's a gift, and I'm very privileged to have it.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I guess lockdown has proven to be a challenge as well as an opportunity for many of us. And it has given us the time to introspect and do something which we have been putting off for a
Could you speak up?
Um, I think
Hello,
we have
Jane.
lost Caleb. Yes, hello. I'm going to continue with the questions. Yes, you can hear me, Lord Jeffrey?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Now, this was a question on behalf of Jalen and me. We both are a big fan of your short stories. Now, the 12 Red Herrings, you offer the readings different options of ending a story. We are now seeing this in a lot of movies and, stuff on Netflix and Amazon Prime. But you started this way before, where you've made major changes in the endings of books. Tell us, how has that worked for you, writing short stories and appealing to a whole generation of all kinds of readers?
Well, we can all learn from R.K. Narayan, one of the great short storytellers of all time. What I've found as I've traveled around the world and met fascinating and interesting people who've told me fascinating and interesting stories is sometimes they're not able to be turned into a full-length novel. They give you a vignette. They give you something a little unusual and special. It's possibly 10 pages. It's possibly 20 pages, and occasionally will be 30. But it's not 300 or 400. That doesn't take away from the story, because sometimes it's a piece of magic in itself. And so I gather those stories up and then write them, as in 12 Red Herrings. And I like the break between writing novels to go to short stories and then to return to novels. It's a very interesting way of doing one's writing. And I've had just as much pleasure from the short stories over the years as I have from the novels. They're a different sort of challenge. You can't waste a word in a short story. Every line has the count, and your end, your twist, has to knock the reader between the eyes. If they see it coming, well, that's not much of a story. They've got to go, help, I didn't see that. And that's the biggest challenge now. And it's a bigger challenge, Jane, partly because I have so many readers, especially in India, who are bright and sharp, that they say, oh, it's Jeffrey, what's he doing to me? I have to watch for it, I can see it coming. So I have to be even sharper and even brighter with the Indians, because they are such fans, they expect certain things to happen. And I have to make sure you can't find them.
I'm going to continue with that question because, your wit, your humor, your, razor sharp attitude towards life, even now, that's what keeps us going. So I'm going to go back to one of my favorite books, Shall We Tell the President? Here, you didn't just change the ending, you changed the protagonist, and it was Florentina Kane. Even today, we don't have a female US president, but you saw this way before. You created the first woman president of the US. You visualized it in the 80s to become a reality. Jalem and I both are big fans of this book as women. And I'm not being sexist here, but I think you gained a lot of female followers from that. Tell us about that decision to change the protagonist. Not so many authors have done that, and you were a torchbearer with that.
Well, of course, I was influenced by Margaret Thatcher becoming Prime Minister of Great Britain and seeing what an amazing job she did, and having had the privilege of working with her for 11 years. sort of getting a feel for what she was going through and the challenge, but the particular challenge for a woman. So decided I would write the story of the first woman president of the United States. But I'm bound to say to you, Florentina Kane, I'm bound to say to you that they've taken rather a long time, and I find it very hard to believe with 120 million women in America, there isn't someone as good as Donald Trump. So I'm looking forward still to a woman president. It's possible, of course, that Joe Biden will pick Senator Carmel as his running mate, the very capable woman from California, and in which case we can all look forward to the first woman, and a Black woman as well. She's a formidable lawyer, a formidable individual, a great orator, and I think she'd make a very good president. So I'm hoping that Joe Biden will select her as his running mate, and then in time she will become the president of the United States.
That's amazing. Now, Jaylam and I had a question to you about your writing process. So much has been said about it. So much has been written about it. You've also shared with us how you've still been writing for 6 hours a day. But I still want to understand from your very own mouth, from the horse's mouth, as to what your writing process is that can encourage so many authors such as Jaylam and many more young, writers and readers in India as well who are watching this, a multitude of them watching it. So from the horse's mouth, tell us about your writing process and how you are so energetic and like a live wire even today. I know it takes the discipline of an army general or a sergeant to do this. So tell us about it, please.
Well, first I would say to anyone listening who wants to be an author, do what suits you. What I do may not suit everybody. I am an owl. My wife, I am a lark, sorry. I am a lark. My wife is an owl. She can work late at night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock. I can't. I get up at 5:30. I'm at my desk at 6. I write for 2 hours. I take a 2-hour break. I then go back at 10 o'clock and work for 2 hours until 12 o'clock. I take a 2-hour break during which I'll have a light lunch. I then go back to the third session, which is 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock. And I then have another break, usually go for a long walk, possibly an hour. Then I go back for the final session when I read what I've done that day. So I do 8 hours a day. Every word is handwritten. You will have noted this morning that I was incapable of putting on the machine to make sure I could talk to you, Jane. It's because I would still be sitting looking out of the window if I'd been in charge. But luckily, Mary, a scientist, chairman of the Science Museum of Great Britain, was able to set it all up for me so that I can talk to you. So in that way, I'm an out-of-date old fogey. I still handwrite, and I'm still very disciplined. But each person watching this, if you want to be an author, do what suits you. You may work in 4-hour spells. You may work in 1-hour spells. Don't be dictated to by me. This is a routine I like, enjoy, and satisfies me. What I would say is you still have to be disciplined and you still have to work hard. Otherwise, you will not succeed.
Well, that is definitely a lesson. I'm going to ask you one question now and then pass it over to Jaylam. You know, you've been writing for 45 years now, and I have read that with respect to this series, the William Warwick series, you're going to be having to write until you're 86 or 87, and book 2 is coming shortly. how are you such a tour de force? What do you have for breakfast? How do you stay so energetic, disciplined, and at the same time so riveting? One of the most read authors of my parents' generation, my generation, and further down from here. What makes you such a tour de force, Jeffrey Archer, according to you?
What a feeble person you are, Jane. Do you think I will only last to 86, 87? I should be writing at the age of 100. So pay attention. I think I'm very lucky again, Jane. I think, energy is a God-given gift. You can't go out and buy packets of it and hope that that will help you. And I'm sort of stuck with energy, also stuck with ambition, and also stuck with determination. Now, those I admit I am stuck with. But there are a lot of people, of course, who have ambition, who have energy, and they haven't been able to channel it in the right direction. So everybody has to find the thing that they have to channel it into to succeed and go forward. I was lucky to find, because I started life as a politician, so I was lucky to find that I had a gift for storytelling, and you're quite right. For the past 45 years, I've been doing that and loving it. And I wouldn't have been up, Jane, at 6 o'clock this morning if I didn't enjoy it. I still enjoy it. The day I stop enjoying it is the day I'll stop.
Well, I wish that you never do. So I'm saying, as a feeble-minded person that you've labeled me, I'm going to hope that it's going to be for 200 years or more. Jalen, over to you.
I'm going to ask you something which is there as a question in me, and you have experimented with screenplay, short stories, non-fiction, drama, and of course fiction. Which is your favorite form of writing?
Well, it's the mood. If you get the idea for a story like William Warwick, and you get the idea that you want to follow this detective all the way, and if I live long enough, and Jane has only allowed me to live to 86 or 87. She's been very unkind, and I won't forget. I want to get him all the way to Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. And that, Jane, will take me to the age of 88 or 89, because I want to take him from being a constable right the way through to when he's running the Metropolitan Police. Now, you'll be able to pick up any of the books at any stage. It's not a sequence. Each story will be about what he's doing at that stage in his career. Which do I enjoy most? I think I genuinely enjoy the one I'm doing. So if I finish, I may go back to short stories. I may write a play. I may write a film script. It's a mood thing. At the moment, I'm very, very happy with following the life of William Warwick and wondering tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning where he will be going, because I don't know.
So there is one form of literature writing which I think you haven't dabbled yet, and that's poetry. Is there going to be any poems at any point of time?
No. Full stop. No. I really admire poets because it's a particular skill that I don't have. I mean, I love poetry and I read it, but I realize, no, I could not do it. So if you are sitting there waiting for my anthology of poetry, you've got a long wait.
Yes. And what about the new age microfiction or tiny tales or Instagram stories? What's your take on it? Would you be venturing or trying to explore those options?
I think you've got to do what you feel at ease with. Of course, I've written a 100-word story and challenged others to do that. I've written a little story called Unique, which is 100 words. I've written Cain and Abel, which is 250,000 words. So I've tried almost every medium. And of course, people are coming through to me saying, it's a new world. You've got to press buttons, stand on your head, throw balls in the air, and then write. Well, that's fine. Off you go. You can do that. I'm going to go on telling my stories in my simple way. Now, people often say to me, will they become dated, Jeffrey, or are you out of touch now? You're an old fogey. Well, it seems to me that people are still reading Cain and Abel, and they're still reading the latest book in India. They're out there. I've got children of 10, 11, and 12 in India who write to me about Cain and Abel. So I've no worry about that. You can have all your modern machinery and your modern ideas and your clever new things that I'm not into. My Indian friends are still reading novels and short stories.
So I'll come up with the next debate which is going on in the publishing industry. Kindle or paperback? Which one do you consume?
Which of the...
Kindle editions or paperback editions?
I'm sorry.
She's asking you about, you have put out a post saying that you read on your Kindle, your new books are out on Kindle, but what is more charming, reading on a Kindle, reading as an ebook, or reading a real
That's a tricky
paperback?
one. That's a tricky one because the world has changed in my lifetime. I think I still, when reading, I prefer to have and to hold a book rather than see it on a screen. And I suspect that applies to most people. But I acknowledge without any question that I have got through to millions of people all over the world because of Kindle. And I acknowledge they have given me a bigger and wider audience, for which I'm very grateful. So when people say, oh, well, you know, authors don't do well out of Kindle, it's just not true. They do very well indeed. You must pray to be read by anybody. You're very privileged and lucky with all those books out there. You're very privileged and lucky that anybody reads you. So when millions of people do, you're particularly privileged. And frankly, I don't mind if they're listening to me on audio, if they're reading it on Kindle, or if they're buying books. And people say to me about India, the disgraceful India, who have no hesitation in selling your books in the street that aren't even your books. They're just printing them themselves, pirate editions, and selling them. I was coming out of Mumbai airport one day, and a little boy tapped on my window, and he said, would you like the latest Jeffrey Archer? And I said, I am the latest Jeffrey Archer. So I don't mind that they quite rightly, the publisher, quite rightly, the bookshop is very angry. But I have a theory. If some of those young people read my book and it's not the official edition, I'll get them later.
I think I'll ask Jane to take over the next few questions because she's been wanting to ask you about cricket and the new consumption series. So Jane, over to you.
This is a subject on which I am a world expert.
Absolutely. So many Indian fans of yours who love your books.
Mr. Sunil Gavaskar had the great kindness to suggest that I was the natural captain of the England cricket team, and he would be delighted if I captained the England cricket team. It was only later I worked out why he would be delighted if I captained.
Your humor always keeps us up and alive, whether it's in your books or otherwise. But lockdown.
I'll interrupt here.
Yes.
What Mr. Archer said about cricket, if you go to his Twitter account, his bio on Twitter says he's going to be the next England captain. Am I right?
Yes, I am naturally the next England captain. I can't bat, I can't bowl, and I can't field. Put these on one side. I have discussed this with Sachin Tendulkar and Sunil Gavaskar, and it didn't worry them. They said they would welcome me to India as the England captain. They've both been very kind. And more flattering, of course, is that so many of them, including Raul Dravid and VVS Laxman, all readers of the book. So the way I've got to know them over the years is not through cricket, because I haven't been able to get onto the same pitch as them. But because they read the books, they very kindly keep in touch and let me know what they feel. And it's been a friendship for me that goes right back to the Nawab of Patodi, who was captain of Oxford when I was up at Oxford, and became a close and dear friend. And quite recently, I did an auction, because I do a lot of charity auctions. I did an auction for his daughter in London, and the Nawab's wife. So it's been a long family connection and a long love of the game of cricket, of which the Indians are not a very good side. They're a load of rubbish. And when we play you, we shall beat you easily. I'm not worried about the fact that Kohli is probably the greatest batsman on earth. It doesn't worry me. I shall deal with it.
That was my question, actually. The current cricket team is preparing for the next season of IPL. I'm sure there will be some English players in as well. Tell us a little bit about, how you like the current Indian cricket team. If you had to rate them honestly from the bottom of your heart, the boys are preparing to come back, and there will not be an audience to watch it most likely. But are you looking forward to watching some cricketing action this year?
I think your present team is very strong. Going back just a little bit, Sehwag was the most exciting opening batsman I think I've seen in my lifetime. Of course, Sachin Tendulkar and VVS Laxman and Rahul Dravid are among the greatest batsmen I've ever seen. I love Kapil Dev, who's a personal friend. But I tell you now, so that you can listen carefully and learn, I hate 2020. I tolerate one-day cricket. Cricket is a test match. Go back to the match between India and Australia, where VVS Laxman and Rahul Dravid batted all day, turned the game round, and India won it the next day. You don't only have to be passionate about your own country. If you're passionate about cricket, you're happy to watch India play Australia and get the same excitement out of it. That's why my love of Indian cricket over the years has given me so much pleasure. What a captain Kumble was when he went to Australia, how he behaved like a gentleman, whereas Mr. Ponting and the Australians couldn't they behave much worse. That was a great credit to India. Nothing to do with his genius as a slow bowler, but as a leader of men and as a gentleman. So I love the game at every level, but I love it more at test level than any other.
And that brings me to my next question, considering I knew you would say that you like the test format. Taking your piece and converting it into a massive saga on OTT. Today, whether it's Amazon Prime or Netflix or Disney Plus Hotstar or the major platforms, even Apple TV, if one of your sagas were to be taken, whether it's from Cain and Abel from that time, or from the Harry Clifton series, or William Warwick, just like how we're seeing things turn around with Game of Thrones, what would be the series that you would want to be, bought the rights of the books and made into a larger than life TV series? Which series would you like to be seen on television? We're seeing that with The Crown on Netflix, but I would love to know from your from you, which would
well, I'd obviously like to see Cain and Abel done again. It's been done once, but I'd love to see it done again. I think the Clifton Chronicles would make a good saga, and funnily enough, I think the best film would be Paths of Glory, the story of Mallory possibly conquering Everest in 1924. But I'd like to add that it's pretty hard to get a film made nowadays. I keep getting approached and then I'm disappointed. But then I talk to other authors and they've been approached and they've been disappointed. So I battle on. Now, I could never write a novel about cricket because half of my readership is in the United States of America, in South America, among the Spanish, among the Europeans. So I've written 2 or 3 short stories in my lifetime on cricket, but I could never write a full novel. Of course, you did a film called Lagan, which many of us have seen.
Yeah.
A ridiculous film at several levels. One, you have to watch the dancing in between the innings. I want to watch the cricket. And then along comes this dancing that I have to watch before the next man goes into bat. And then more ridiculous still was the Indian who said, I think it was that idiot Lidgen said to me, I couldn't quite be sure who would win the match. I said, what do you mean you couldn't quite be sure? It was a film made by the Indians, about the Indians, for the Indians. It was a pretty good chance the Indians were going to win. But then I also pointed out to Lidgen, who can be very slow, I also pointed out to Lidgen, none of it would have worked without the umpires. The umpires, may I remind you, were English and behaved properly. And the reason you won was because the umpires didn't cheat. So I'm a great believer in the fairness of cricket, the decency of cricket, and what it brings to one's life. And that ridiculous film, Lagan, and it's dancing half an hour. Take the dancing out, you'd have a fantastic film.
Well, I love your energy and I love the way that you can make us smile and laugh across the screen like this. I'm going to go over to Jalam, who has some questions on your spirit of resilience. Jalam, take over.
So your spirit of resilience, we have no doubt about it. And so I'm going to change the question a little bit. And the theatrical way in which you speak, have you thought of appearing on stage and appearing as one of your characters?
As a young man at Oxford, I considered a career in acting, but I couldn't in my heart believe that's what I wanted to do. It's such a precarious profession. And half your life, if not 3/4 of your life, you're out of work. And went into politics to begin with and came to writing with not a penny more, not a penny less, later in life, 45 years ago. So yes, I've thought about it. And I, of course, enjoy public speaking. I was very privileged to go to the Bangalore Festival, where 7,500 people came to hear me speak. So I was very touched by that, and it will remain a memory for the rest of my life. So I enjoy public speaking, and I enjoy the privilege of being able to speak because I write. It means that I can go and talk about the books and listen to people's questions, particularly in India, where the crowds are just amazing. The only humiliating thing in India is the 12-year-old girls. They're cleverer than I am, and they've read the books recently, and they know more about them than I do. And it's quite terrifying. I keep warning people in England, we're going to be taken over by the Indians. Well, of course, we now have an Indian Chancellor of the Exchequer. So my predictions are coming true.
So, Vince, we are talking about you and India and your fans here. Would you share with us any fun anecdote that happened with a reader? Or if are you thinking of writing a book again somewhere based in India?
I thought about it, but the trouble is, you have some of the greatest writers on earth. And when they write about their own country, I'm very aware when they write about their own country, how they capture the mood and the feeling. I wouldn't be able to do that. I could do that about England, about my beloved Somerset, about London, but I couldn't do it about India, and you'd catch me out. You only have to read V.V.S. Laxmi, you only have to read R.K. Narayan to see that he can take a story in a tiny Indian village about a taxman, and you're there in the village. You're following the taxman's every mood. But why? Because R.K. Narayan understood an Indian village and Indian people and how they think. So I'm afraid the answer to your question, and many, many people have asked me because of my love of India, I don't have the confidence that to write with the same freedom that I write when I write about Britain, the United States, politics, art. So no, I will leave that to the great Indian writers.
So before I pass on the thing to Jane, I have one last question to ask you. Which authors do you read, or which authors inspire you?
Well, I'm a storyteller, so I'm inspired by Dickens. I'm inspired by Dumas. I'm inspired by Victor Hugo, but my latest and recent favorite, because Jane has been very kind to point out that I'm very, very old. My latest and recent hero is someone you may not have heard of. And so I tell everybody to read him. Read Beware of Pity by Stefan Zweig. Mr. Zweig has that rare quality of being not only a great writer, but a great storyteller. So he's very special. And he's inspired me in the way that I consider it a privilege to read him. And I have no doubt that I learn from him because he is so talented at his craft. He lived in the Second World War in the 1940s and sadly committed suicide, having only written 2 novels and several short stories. But his non-fiction books are also brilliant. He was able to conquer both fields. So he's very special. What am I reading at the moment? I'm very much enjoying A Gentleman in Moscow, which is a story of a man stuck in a great hotel because Lenin has said if he comes out, he'll get shot. It's a great story. I also enjoyed The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Those have been the 2 books that I enjoyed last year. So I'm reading quite a bit, and I'm always only too happy to hear of books I should read. Of course, we in England are currently watching the television series of Akram Seth's television series. Now, he's a brilliant writer, but he's a tiresome fellow, Mr. Seth, because he can do everything. There doesn't seem to be anything he can't do. He can play a musical instrument. He can write a book. He can do anything, that man. So I'm in awe of Mr. Seth. I think he's very, very special indeed. And I think A Suitable Boy is a truly great novel and should be read not by every Indian, but by everybody. And there's a cricket match in there, Jane. There's a cricket match in there.
Yes.
And I loved it.
Vikram Seth is just amazing. We're looking forward to reading more of that. I read A Suitable Girl and Cain and Abel side by side back in school, but I have some questions. This is from Lijan, your favorite man. He says, tell us about discovering Indian fans and your Indian tours. When is India going to see you again? Let's just hope this pandemic is over soon already.
Well, of course, Lijan, who's been very kind to me over the years and played a great role in helping my career in India, for which I'm very grateful. I mean, the truth is, you've hit it, Jane. We're all in lockdown at the moment, and India seems to be in a terrible state, with very many people catching COVID-19, and sadly, so many people dying. So to predict at the moment when I'll next come to India is almost impossible. That is why I've been regularly in touch over the Zoom. I don't like Zoom because I can't be in the room with the people, but it's better than nothing. And I'm only able to do it because of my wife, but my poor wife has been Zooming me through to India once a week. I think I'm never stopped going through, and that's fine. It's a second-class way of doing it, but it's fine. And the answer to Lijan's question is I'll come as soon as it is sensible to come, because I miss you a lot.
Well, I hope that you is just me, but I know that it's for all your Indian fans. And speaking of your fans, here's Sanat who asks you, what does it mean to spread so much of love among humans in general, especially during this pandemic? People have gone back to their love for reading. And I'm sure many of them are rereading Jeffrey Archer's books and also starting the William Warwick series right now. So his question is, what is your message to those fans and all the authors and young writers who are watching you right now?
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, Jane. The truth is, I write what I write, and I say to young authors, do what you feel safe with. Write what you write and hope that the public like it. Now, your feeble, pathetic effort, I mean you personally, Jane, on Cain and Abel. I have a lady in Australia who's read Cain and Abel 186 times. She actually knows it off by heart. So you are feeble, Jane. You're not in the top ranking people. But listen to these people who want to be writers. I had a lady come to see me, I don't know, 3 months ago and said, I want to be a writer, but I don't meet any interesting people like you. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, I work in a hairdresser. I said, you silly woman, there's more stories in a hairdresser's parlor than anywhere on earth. I mean, 6 women stuck under a heater, all chatting to each other. You've got nothing but stories. So I said, sit down and write your story and set it in a hairdresser's and steal all their stories and intermingle them, and you'll be away. So I say to people, write about what you know about and feel safe with. And then the reader will read it and say, wow, he really knows about hairdressing. Even the detail is so fine. And the stories are wonderful. So I could never write a story in a hairdressing shop, but I told this lady very firmly that she could.
Nita Aneja says, I'm a big fan. You have so many complex characters and timelines of all of your books and series. I mean, for those who are writing in their hairdressers, fantastic for them. But you're writing, right now you're in Cambridge. How do you even keep track of everything? Is there a diary, or do you have a photographic memory, or are they constantly talking to you in your head, Jeffrey?
It's a very good question because, again, my wife and I couldn't be more different. If she has a meeting like this one with you, Jane, she writes notes nonstop. And then she has the notes and she puts the notes in a file with hundreds of other files with lots of notes. I keep most of the stuff bubbling around in my head. So this morning I had an idea during the William Warwicks that the very young detective woman, Rebecca Pankhurst, who's the great granddaughter of the great Emily Pankhurst, who fought for women's rights. So she's now in the Metropolitan Police, and she's a young detective constable. She's the lowest form of life. But I suddenly had an idea this morning that I could bring her into a particular scene and I could double it up with someone else and have the reader wondering what's happening. Now, I can't write that down while I'm thinking about it. I like it buzzing around in the mind. And then I will go to my desk and write furiously, write furiously. And when I leave you today, Jane, I will go and lie down on my bed and rest for 30 minutes. I've already written 2 drafts of that, and I'll go down and write the 3rd and 4th. It's only 2 pages. I'll go down and write, it might be 3 pages in the end. I'll go down and write that. So that's been in my mind today. So I don't make notes, I do the actual writing. And the writing sometimes takes me in a direction I hadn't expected. I go over there, oh, that didn't work, but Miss Pankhurst goes over there. So I have to follow her. I have to do what Miss Pankhurst wants to do. And that happens to me all the time. I set off in the morning with one theme and one idea, and then the character in the book says, no, I want to go over here. So I go with them.
So you follow your characters, and that is something that we follow with you. Monica Mona Lisa, a good friend of mine who writes for the Indian Express in India, well, her question, out of all your books, you have a little soft corner for A Prisoner of Birth. What makes that book special for you?
Prisoner of Birth was a challenge because, of course, Dumas wrote the brilliant Count of Monte Cristo, which is a masterpiece and one of my favorite books. It wouldn't work today because it's 3,000 pages long. And even if you tighten up the words, it's 1,500 pages long. If Dumas was alive today, the Count of Monte Cristo would be about 500 pages. But you have to remember, in his day, there was no television. There was no radio. There were no tweets and Facebooks. And so people couldn't wait for a Dumas novel to be 2,000 pages long. They loved it. And he wrote, people forget that he wrote the Count of Monte Cristo and the Three Musketeers in the same year. He wrote both those books in 1 year. Again, he wouldn't do that today. So I thought the challenge, Jane, of taking that massive tome and turning it into a 500-page, 600-page book, but in modern terms, with a young boy living in the East End of London who comes up against a couple of upper-class people who cause him to go to jail when they are guilty. Same challenge as Dumas, but I wanted to bring it into the modern day world. And yes, you're quite right. It has proved, Prisoner of Birth has proved to be one of my most popular books. You're quite right. And I immensely enjoyed writing it. I got a great thrill out of it, and a thrill that very few people get, the ending.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of them Google search, explain ending just to understand it better. Hundreds of people are watching us, your Indian fans, on Facebook and on Zoom. And this will once again be put out there on various social media platforms. During this lockdown, while everyone's been having a relatively tough time, the joy and pleasure of reading, especially reading a Jeffrey Archer novel, book, short story, whatever it is, how amazing does it feel that even during a troubling time like this, you are constantly keeping us company, even without being in our room, literally. The whole voyeuristic pleasure of reading a Jeffrey Archer novel at this time or a book at this time. How happy do you feel about that?
Well, the irony is, of course, Jane, that all disasters have a bright side, not much of a bright side in the case of COVID-19. But I suspect more people are reading books than they have done for a very long time. And certainly I'm getting more letters, more emails, more communications from people telling me they're reading me at the moment. And I can only believe that's been caused by lockdown. I can only believe that, and some of them are getting sick of television, because if you have it every single day, always there, they can turn to a book. So you're quite right. I've been lucky, and it's a great privilege, because some sad people, actors, for example, they're all out of work. They can't get work because you can't have the cameras moving and the producer moving and the director moving and everyone else doing their job because it's now impossible. Whereas there's nothing to stop me writing the book, and there's nothing to stop you reading it. So in that way, I got very lucky indeed, and I'm well aware of it.
Arun Ji and Sheila, just 3 or 4 more questions before we let you go and rest for those 30 minutes. Arun Ji and Sheila.
England are playing Pakistan at the moment, Jane, and you're stopping me watch it. And we're doing very well. Pakistan are doing very well.
I will not comment on that. Arun Ji and Sheila are both asking you this question that many writers constantly have. The 2 words that kind of plagues most writers is writer's block. I don't think you have it at all. Maybe you should tell them about how we do not have writer's block, people who are writers.
My home in Mallorca is called writer's block, but in fact, I've never had it. I've had problems when I reach a stage where I can't see a way out, because the great editor, the great American editor, Corliss Smith, who edited J.D. Salinger, I had the privilege of being edited by him. And he taught me like a tutor, he taught me, if you can make the situation so that you can't see a way out, the reader can't see a way out, but you have to find a way out. So I don't get writer's block, but I sometimes get to a situation where I make it so difficult for myself that I have to work a way out. And I had that problem at the end of Nothing Ventured, the first of the William Warwick books. But I worked out. It took me 6 months, but I worked out how to get out of it. But no writer's block. You're quite right, Jane. No writer's block.
Yeah, you're writing every day. I guess that is something that consistently is there. Here's a question which is coming from Swapnil. Your career as an erstwhile politician and your interest in politics from a world stage, from where you sit in Cambridge right now to Indian politics at this point in time, tell us how much of it has influenced your style of writing, building those characters. We know that you've always had different layers to your books and the complexities. Does it arise out of your tryst with politics too?
Well, I think it means you meet very interesting people. It means you meet fascinating people. I've had the privilege of meeting Mr. Modi, and of course I worked for Margaret Thatcher for 11 years and for John Major for 7 years. Those experiences are bound to help a book, because when the reader reads the political side of my books, or they read a story concerning a politician, I think they know that I've been there and done that, which is an advantage. We go back to Our Lady in the hairdresser shop. Do what you know about. Someone asked me very cruelly the other day, a very distinguished writer in this country, after leaving university, do I wish I'd only been a writer, that I hadn't bothered with politics? Which was a fair question. I think I could see where he was coming from and why he'd asked the question. But the truth is, I say to any young writer watching this, the more experiences you can get, the more interesting people you can meet, the better. Because that will add to your knowledge and what you can pass on to other people.
Absolutely. I'm going to go across to my last question.
Hey, I have a follow-up question to that, if that's all right.
Wait a moment. You just said it was the last question. There's now 2 of you speaking.
Nijesh heard the last question. He said, I got to ask this one. So maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Follow-up question, because Mr. Archer mentioned about meeting a lot of people to understand more about their stories, and that's what gives you ideas in terms of what to write and how to go about it. So how do you tend to meet many people? Are you an avid traveler, or do you step out and consciously go about meeting people in particular slots? So how is it about you and meeting people?
Well, you can't consciously do it, in the sense you can't say, well, I want to meet Mr. Modi, or I want to meet Boris Johnson, or I want to meet Mr. Trump. That one of the privileges of millions of people buying the books is that often some of them have read the books. So you can talk to them, you can get in touch. And over the years, you're quite right, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of people. But it's quite difficult. You've got to make sure when you meet someone, you don't waste the meeting. You don't just shake hands, say hello and goodbye. You've got to make sure that you have something to chat about that will interest them, and that you will use the time advisedly. But don't overestimate meeting the famous and the rich. Sometimes the best stories can come from people, as R.K. Narayan proved, from a tax collector in a small village. People have stories. People have amazing things to say. Listen carefully.
listening carefully and hanging on to your every word. All of your thousands of fans who tune into this and who will see this. My last question is going to be a little bit of a three-part. I've been stalking you on Instagram. I'm not sure if you're updating it, but I see your little granddaughter, Sophia, a couple of days ago. And some hours ago, I saw Cambridgeshire in all its glory. So from Cambridge through India, from the beautiful memories you continue to make during this lockdown while you're writing and spending time with your youngest granddaughter as well. What's your final shout out to all the fans who love you with all of our hearts? We actually love you. We're absolutely honored, thrilled, and extremely joyous. Najesh, Jalam, and everybody else on this panel and who are watching this, your final shout out of love, your message of hope, and everything you want to say to India before you say goodbye tonight.
Well, that's another privilege I have, Jane. I have a very wonderful family, 2 wonderful sons, 4 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters, 2 grandsons, and an amazing wife. So in that way, I've been privileged to have them around me in good times and in bad. And we all have good times and we all have bad times. Don't kid yourself. Everybody has that. No one has an easy run from the beginning of their life to the end. Of course, it's how you run that course that matters. But one of the great privileges for me has been to have a wonderful family. And you're quite right. During lockdown, my second granddaughter appeared. And I'm happy to say Sophia, is very fit and very well and doesn't seem to know that we're in the middle of lockdown. But of course, she's an example of someone who will be told about it in years to come. You, Jane, and your generation, it'll be your world war. You'll remember it very vividly indeed, and you'll tell your grandchildren about it because it is an important event in the history of the world, sadly. And we all have to do the best we can to come out of it as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm telling you this so that you don't hold it as a prejudice against me. 200 or 250 years with Sir Jeffrey Archer. So many more books, so much of love from everybody in India, Jalam and Najesh as well, and everybody watching this. Neeta has said, thank you so much for answering my question. Soumya has said, love you, Lord Jeffrey Archer. It was a sheer pleasure to attend this.
Thank you.
In the words of another panelist, Jeffrey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. And my love and affection, as always, is returned to the Indian people. You're a mad lot with an average cricket team, but I love you people.
Yes. Thank you very much. On behalf of RMZ Galleria Mall, Yelahanka, on behalf of Sapna Book House, on behalf of all the authors and writers, enjoy your writing all across, and we will look forward to book number 2, Hidden in Plain Sight, shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.
I have a final request. Whenever somebody talks to me on the radio or as part of the Sapna Rise series, you have to do a woohoo, like woohoo.
Why do I have to do a woohoo?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Help, Mary.
Thank you very much, Mary Archer, as well.
And Mary's in the background running my life. And in a moment, she will appear. I hope.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Well, that was Lord Jeffrey Archer. His new book will be out shortly, sometime this year, as part of the William Warwick series. Najesh and Jalam, do you have anything to say to everybody out there? There's Mary. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Very welcome. Hello there. Hope that went well.
That went fantastic. Thank you very much, Mary. All the best.
Okay, I'll leave the meeting now. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.
Najesh, do you want to say anything, final words to everyone out there? And Jalam?
Right. I think, first of all, it was an absolute honor to have Jeffrey Archer with us. And I think the entire hour went by and we didn't really realize because he was so much full of energy, so much full of life, and there's so much that we could learn from this entire session. Thank you, all the viewers. Thank you to Jailam, and of course, last but not the least, Jane, you were really good, and you took in a lot of questions from the audience and made all the viewers so happy. So on behalf of Sapna Book House, on behalf of Sapna Rise, and of course, RMZ Galleria Mall, thank you so much for this lovely session. We hope to bring more sessions like these in collaboration with our entire team and partners to the viewers out there very soon.